This is Liverpool Live Radio on a Saturday afternoon. A very happy weekend to you. I'm Paul Hicks, and Steve Dickinson is still with us. Steve is the co-author of a book on Everton's recent history, the unofficial Everton timeline, 2014 to 2024, the Mashiri years. And Steve, as I say, is still with us. And Steve, there is a real sense of optimism and belief at Everton that this club has now turned the corner and that better days lie ahead under the new ownership, of course, and the arrival of David Moyes as well. And I believe that your book has been updated now, hasn't it, from the end of the Mashiri era to the arrival of the Friedkin Group?
Yeah, our first edition ended at the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. And at that time, Farhad Mashiri was still the owner. 777 were still his preferred exclusive partners to go forward and buy the club. And what a disaster that would have been. Sean Dyche was still the manager. We just been deducted the 10 points from the first independent commission, which was later reduced to 6 on appeal. We were awaiting the hearing on the second independent commission, where we were then docked a further 2 points. So it was all very gloomy around the club and an enormous pressure for the players, the management at the club, and, of course, the fans. How things have changed.
Absolutely, because, like I say, we talk today in very different circumstances, and Evertonians hope that the new ownership will bring stability to the club, but also success on the pitch. And we're beginning to see that, of course, under David Moyes. But what are your hopes, Steve, for the future of the club under new ownership? Where do you see Everton Football Club maybe in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Well, I think we're seeing at the moment a certain, you could say new manager bounce, but also new owner bounce. Because, you know, as I've just said, the news around the club has been so gloomy and down for the last 3 years, literally where the club faced, even according to its own directors, the potential of administration if it had gone down into the Championship. And as we all know, we escaped relegation by 1 or 2 points for a couple of years. So the Friedkin Group coming in as a stable, financially successful organisation with a background in football as well, with the ownership of AS Roma. They've turned that situation round at Roma, and under Mourinho, while he was still at the club, they won a trophy there. They've not been without their trials and tribulations at Roma, having sacked the favourite manager Daniel De Rossi earlier on in the season. So, you know, they've learned the good and the bad of football ownership, have the Friedkins. And now I think with all of that experience, and most importantly with significant assets and resources behind them, they come into Everton and brought a new vision and a more of a professionalism to the way the club has been run since they arrived. I'd like to think that the vision will turn into really good recruitment. And I think they've started well with that. Sean Dyche, despite his success for the first 18 months with the club, had run his course. And I think that the tensions and the pressures around the club really got to Sean Dyche. And we saw a drop-off in his and the team's performance in the first part of the season. And they acted fairly quickly. They'd only been in charge for a few weeks when they took the decision to part company with Sean Dyche. And the way that they appointed David Moyes was a far cry from the long-winded recruitment processes that Farhad Mashiri went through to appoint all of the managers. And interesting, of course, that Farhad Mashiri had the opportunity on 3 occasions to appoint David Moyes, and didn't do so on all 3 occasions and brought in other people with not so much success. So their appointment of a manager was handled very well. I think their decision to bring in David Moyes, it seemed like a good idea at the time. And Moyes has outperformed my expectations because he's become, it's demonstrably a more rounded person since his first 11 years with the club. He's Also, he's benefited from some trials and tribulations of his own through various positions. And his management skills, I would think, have been honed significantly in recent years. And we're seeing that now with the confidence that the players are showing on the pitch. Basically, it's the same squad with one addition in the transfer window in January with Charlie Alcaraz. It's the same team, and actually under probably even more injury stress than it's been at any time for a long period. So he hasn't got many players to choose from. They're all playing with confidence, and the signs are looking very good.
And you mentioned Charlie Alcaraz, and I think in Alcaraz, Evertonians have got a new hero, of course. He seems to be loving life on Merseyside, and we know that Alcaraz scored the winner for the Blues last weekend at Palace, his first goal for the club. And potentially, what we see from Alcaraz this season could be very special.
It could, and it was so good, having had the disappointment of our favourite Iliman Ndiaye going off injured. Then to have Alcaraz coming into the team, he really sparkled down at Palace. He only came on for the last 10 minutes today and didn't really get too much of an opportunity to get into the game. But again, another example of good recruitment. In various transfer windows over the last 3-4 years, the club's been hurried and pushed into making ill-founded decisions. The example would be someone like Mopé coming in at the last minute. And it looks as though Alcaraz is a different kettle of fish and is going to be a strong addition to the team in the second half of the season.
And as somebody who writes books, Steve, you're very familiar with chapters, of course, and it did feel on Monday night that it was a new chapter and the first page of a new chapter for Everton with the first test event at Bramley Moor Dock. I believe you were there on Monday night. From what I've heard, it is the size and the scale of the new stadium that seems to impress upon people as they see the stadium for the very first time.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing for me is about the stadium is relief, because only a few months ago, we were still scrabbling around for the last tens of millions to finish the stadium and to fit it out. So, that's another huge benefit, of course, of TFG coming in and taking ownership of the club. They provided the funds and the certainty to complete the stadium. And like many people, I've stood outside the dock wall opposite the Bramley Moor, or next to the Bramley Moor pub, looking through the fences over the last couple of years, seeing how things have progressed. And it was wonderful to get the opportunity. And me and my mate applied for tickets in the ballot. We were lucky to get them. Walking through one of the openings in the dock wall, you really got a feeling of the scale and size of the stadium. Only the south stand open for this first test event. We were in the top southwest corner, which is as you walk along the stadium past the south end, and from the Mersey side of the ground. I felt even approaching the ground, sort of a childlike excitement. I felt a bit like Dorothy in the Blue Brick Road and approaching the Sapphire Palace. So, and coming up the steps into the stadium itself, it reminded me of my first trip to Goodison in 1969 and coming out and seeing the pitch illuminated and so bright and green, all of these memories. So, and it will be a fantastic stadium when it's full. You think now that the atmosphere that we get at Goodison, and it's going to be hard to replace that. But at Bramley Moor, there'll be another 12,000 or so Evertonians in the ground than we get at Goodison. There is no bad view in the house. Every single place is unobstructed. I feel almost like taking my own polystyrene pillar so I can sit behind it and feel very much at home. But anyway, I shan't do that. But so no bad views at all. Even the huge screens at either end are crystal clear. You can really see what's going on. And the view of the pitch, we were quite high up, say in the southwest corner. But the view from the pitch of the game itself was fantastic.
And also as well, Steve, significantly, it's the commercial value of the new stadium that will be significant in terms of raising revenue for Everton Football Club, with its potential, of course, to host big events in the city, whether that's football or otherwise. And I believe that it's estimated the new stadium will also contribute about 1.3 billion to the local economy, which is significant.
It is. And of course, it's always been positioned as being a key element of the North Docks regeneration project, the 10 Streets area, and all of the activity that is believed to be happening as within that North Docks area. And I just hope that the council and Steve Rotherham, the Metro Mayor, can get their act together in terms of transportation infrastructure, because I drive to Goodison. I live quite some distance. I drive several hours to get to Goodison for the home games. And I parked in the city, in Pall Mall, walked up to the ground with my mate. Took about 30 minutes. I can walk a little bit faster, but he's just had a heart operation, so we were pacing ourselves. We didn't see any buses. We didn't see any taxis. We didn't see any soccer buses. We didn't see any park and ride. These things should have all been planned over the 4 years since Everton got planning permission for the stadium. We have heard, of course, that they've put some cattle fences up at Sandhills to marshal the fans. But from what I heard from people, it was chaos on the way out from Sandhills after the game. And that was with a crowd of only 10,000. So when there are 53,000 there, things really need to push on a pace. And I hope that the council will rise to this. We need some short-term solutions, some more local private parking closer to the ground for sure. Some park and ride schemes to various places would be really helpful. A whole fleet of buses taking people away from the ground speedily afterwards. And then, of course, in 2028, we've got the Euros coming up. So, we really need, as a region, to get our act together and be thinking about the North Docks as being similar to the Albert Dock and the King's Dock, multi-storey car parks, impressive facilities. There's a lot to do, but the stadium itself is great.
And I know that a lot of, or rather a group of Everton supporters are writing to Liverpool City Council to express their concerns over access to the stadium, which we saw on Monday night. I guess to some degree that's why they have these test events, isn't it? To try and iron out issues with transportation. But I guess the concern is if that was on a night with 10,000 spectators, time is going to run out before the start of the new season in August, and it's whether the council can get the transportation situation sorted so that when there are 52,000 spectators on match day, that the whole process then would run seamless. They haven't got a lot of time, have they, Steve?
They haven't. And, if I was a local business up in that part of the town as well, I would currently be fuming because the no park zone that surrounds Bramley Moor Dock Stadium is bizarrely, they seem to be applying that 365 days a year. Well, why is that? Nobody seems to have answered that question. And, it only needs to be imposed on match days and event days, and they're well planned in advance.
Steve Dickinson is still with us this afternoon. And Steve, we were talking about David Moyes earlier, and it's true to say that when Moyes was at Everton in his first spell as manager, he showed that he could get the very, very best out of his players. And of course, we're beginning to see that again now, aren't we? With a number of key players raising their game since David Moyes has arrived. In particular, Beto, he's now scored 5 goals in his last 6 games, and I believe that previously he had to play 42 games to score 4 goals before the arrival of David Moyes. It is incredible, isn't it, how some of these players are now really beginning to find their feet.
It is, and he learnt very quickly, did Moyes, how to play Beto to his best effect. Under the previous manager, Beto, when he came on, typically for the last 20 minutes, 10 minutes here and there, was getting balls thrown at him, round head height, shoulder height. They'll bounce off him into the next, into the stands. But play the ball in the channels on the ground, and he's got a hell of a turn of pace. I remember a fantastic goal he scored in a victory against Newcastle last season when we pinged it round, and I think, afterwards it's counted up that about 24 passes consecutively. The ball was played down the right-hand side, and Beto picked it up near the halfway line and beat the defender for pace and bore down on goal and put the ball through the goalkeeper's legs into the back of the net. That's exactly how to play him, and that's how they have played him. He's stepped up. He's taken his opportunity, but he's being provided with far higher quality chances than he had previously been.
And I think we should also remind ourselves that Beto was about to leave Everton in January, and it was David Moyes who insisted that he stay.
Yeah, I think he was definitely on the way out. He had talks with David Moyes, so we hear, demanding a departure. And funny how things work out, and the injury, the latest injury to, unfortunately for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, just created that necessity that some centre forward stayed at the club, and he's taken his opportunities so well. And some of the other players as well who weren't getting a look in under Sean Dyche, like Jake O'Brien, it's turned out he's looking very, very good at right back. Even goes on some foraging runs from time to time. But for a big lad, and he is built like a mountain, he's got a very good feel for the ball and plays the ball on the ground very well.
And hopefully we'll see the return of Iliman Ndiaye before too long. I know David Moyes said in his press conference yesterday that Ndiaye is taking injections and that maybe he will be back earlier than first thought, which has to be good news for everybody associated with the club, because Iliman Ndiaye, again, has been one of the standout players for Everton this season.
He has, and when he dribbles the ball, it gets you up off your seat. We haven't had a player like him for a long time. I think some people have compared him a little bit like to Stephen Pienaar from the first Moyes days. But of course, Pienaar, apart from a totally different player, but also had that fantastic combination on the left with Leighton Baines. And, but actually, Vitaly Mykolenko has also stepped up his game in recent times as well. So, yeah, there's confidence oozing out of players now all around the pitch.
And I think it's fair to say what we're also seeing from Everton now is the ability to pick up points even when they're not playing their best football. And to some degree, we saw that last weekend against Crystal Palace. It was a 2-1 win for Everton, but it wasn't the best performance we've ever seen from the Blues, and yet they managed to get the 3 points.
They did, and they started in the first half a little bit shaky in defence. And of course, it came on the back of that magnificent derby win against the Reds just a few days prior. So some of the players probably looked a little bit tired, a little bit mentally tired as well. But they hung on in there, and actually it turned out to be a very typical David Moyes Everton performance from his first spell. And to grab that winner about 10 minutes from the end, just put the icing on the cake. Fantastic performance.
And since David Moyes came back to Everton, Everton have picked up 14 points from their last 7 games. And I was looking at the interview that Jared Branthwaite gave a couple of days ago, and he was talking about before David Moyes came back to Goodison, Everton had that defensive resilience and the structure as a squad. But Moyes has brought in some attacking flair and knowledge, says Branthwaite. He says that as a team, we are creating a lot more chances. We're working on different positions for the attackers and different runs to make to open the defence. I think you can see it is working, said Branthwaite. And again, we have to agree. Jared Branthwaite, again, a really good performance from him against Manchester United today.
He's a Rolls Royce. And I really hope that even if Real Madrid or someone like that comes in with a big offer for him in the summer, the Friedkin Group will say thanks but no thanks, because Jared Branthwaite could and should be the club captain in years to come, and we should be building the team around him.
So it is all positive. As I say, disappointing today not to get the win. We discussed the penalty decision before. But Steve, looking ahead to the future, you must be feeling very optimistic.
Yeah, as an Evertonian, you never want to get too far ahead of yourself. But, you know, we now only have to worry about things really on the field. You know, just a few months ago, there was so much to worry about off the field, ownership, who would become the owners, cash flow, all of those kinds of things, and even ongoing issues with the Premier League and PSR, which appear to have now been resolved and cleared up. So yeah, you know, it is still a time of restructuring within the club, off the field as well. You know, the Friedkins will make decisions about a new CEO in the near future, about who should be the director of football, and very important decisions they are too. The squad will need to be significantly rebuilt this summer. So many of the players are out of contract. A few of them may get offered new contracts that would otherwise have left. And there would have to be quite an influx of new players into the squad. But, you know, I have confidence, particularly with David Moyes' track record of recruitment, that he will, if he's involved in the recruitment, and I'm sure he must be, he will spend wisely and we'll end up with an even better squad going into next season.
Excellent. And as I said before, congratulations on the book, The Unofficial Everton Timeline, 2014 to 2024, the Mashiri years. As I say, it's been updated up to the point at which the Friedkin Group signed the deal to buy the club. For those listening, Steve, if they want to get a copy of the book, how's the best way to do that?
Through Amazon, that's the best way. Go to amazon.co.uk and do a search for The Unofficial Everton Timeline, 2014 to 2024, and you'll see the book, and there'll be several options for you. You can either buy as an ebook, as a paperback, or now out as an audio book as well. And the audio book is also available on audible.com and on Apple Books.